Donald Trump has just been sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. This is big news for the world and for Japan. But how does Japan feel about it? Hello, I'm Jeffrey Hall, and welcome to Japan Matters, a channel in which we discuss various matters related to Japan. In this video, we'll be looking at how Japan views US President Donald Trump. Many of the people watching this video will probably be American and might have very intense negative or positive feelings about President Trump. If you're spending a lot of time online, social media algorithms tend to promote content that appeals to your political views, and it's very easy to stumble upon examples of Japanese people who seem to claim views about Trump that are similar to your own, whether you love or you hate him. But are such people representative of Japan? Let's look at some examples of actual data to get a wider picture of Japanese views on this topic. Before we get to how Trump is viewed in Japan today, let's rewind a bit back to 2016 when he was running against Hillary Clinton for the presidency. At the time, there was a lot of media coverage in Japan that was quite negative about Trump. He was depicted as a rather extreme person, saying very negative things about Japan and other countries. So there wasn't a lot of positive feeling about him, and we can see this in one of the polls that was conducted ahead of the election. Here's an example of a pre-election poll conducted by the research firm NTT.com, asking Japanese who they wanted to win the 2016 presidential election. An overwhelming majority of Japanese, 89.3%, favored Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. This means that only about 1 in 10 Japanese people wanted a Trump presidency at the time, and this was in November 2016, right before the election. The same poll, when broken up by age group, showed that there really wasn't much difference between people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and above in terms of preferring Clinton over Trump. Almost everybody wanted Trump to lose, and that's a sign that he wasn't very popular in Japan at the time. However, Trump ended up winning the election, a result that stunned Japan and the world. Prime Minister Abe rushed to New York to meet with President Trump, and he sought friendly relations with the new president-elect. Now, let's look at how polls changed after Trump became president. First off, here's a poll from the Genran MPO, a nonpartisan think tank. In July 2017, several months after Trump took office, they asked Japanese people about several topics in Japan-US relations. You can check the link to this survey in the video description if you want to see all of the answers. I'm just going to show a few here. One of the most interesting questions from this survey was asking Japanese, after hearing Trump's statements and seeing his actions, has your trust in our American ally changed? There are, of course, about 9% of people who never trusted America in the first place. However, the number of people who say their trust decreased was 50.8%, a rather remarkable number. And in terms of people who believed that because of Donald Trump, trust in America as an ally had increased, was merely 2%. So it does not appear that there was a huge change since the pre-election polls in the way people viewed Donald Trump. This is a rather negative response to his presidency in the early months. Another question from the same poll asked, what level of expectation do you have for American leadership in the following fields under the Trump administration? And it had a variety of topics here. Some, like climate change or wealth disparity, are obviously ones that people usually wouldn't really rely on America, especially under a Republican administration, to do much about. But what is interesting here is that when it comes to maintaining international peace, 52.6% of Japanese have few expectations, 11.6% have no expectations, and only about 22% of Japanese have some expectations or high expectations. of America maintaining international peace. And this is crucial for Japan, a country that considers America its ally and protector. But that poll was conducted in the early months of the Trump administration. There had only been less than half of a year, so maybe things changed as Prime Minister Abe continued to work hard to try to build a personal relationship with Trump. Let's see one survey from later in that year. Here is a poll conducted near the end of 2017, the first year of Trump's presidency, from Japan's national broadcaster NHK. It asked, "What is your view of President Trump?" 18% of Japanese had a positive view, while 54% had a negative view. This negative view of Donald Trump greatly surpassed the positive view among all age groups, all genders, and even among supporters of Japan's conservative ruling LDP, where 49% of them had negative views of Trump and only 24% had a positive view of the president. So in this survey, even conservative Japanese people didn't really have a very positive view of the president. It seemed to be an improvement from when almost 90% of Japanese preferred Hillary Clinton, but there really wasn't much positive feeling about Trump. They also asked, "Do you think America is heading in a good direction?" Only 18% answered yes, and 55% answered no. Once again, there was a question about trust in the United States. Do you trust the United States government? 48% said yes, and 51% said no. This is a rather serious and concerning answer when Japan relies on the United States for its protection. Several years passed, and Prime Minister Abe continued to meet with Trump. They golfed on several occasions, they met for various summits, and did scenes of the two leaders smiling and enjoying themselves help turn the Japanese public in favor of Donald Trump? Well, let's look at a few polls from 2020, the final year of Trump's presidency, and see if the numbers changed very much. In May 2020, ahead of Trump's reelection campaign, national broadcaster NHK asked Japanese if they thought a Trump victory would have a positive or negative impact on Japan. Once again, a majority, 57%, believed that a continuation of Trump's presidency would have a negative impact. Only 10% of Japanese people thought that a second Trump term would have a positive impact. This survey noted that the proportion of those citing negative impact answers greatly exceeded those citing positive impacts across genders and all age groups. So, across all age groups, across all genders, people thought that there was more of a negative impact than a positive impact. There were, of course, some people who thought it was a positive impact, but this is 10%, almost the same as the about 10% that supported Trump when he ran against Hillary in 2016. The same survey also asked Japanese to name who they thought was the best US president in the post-World War II era. Memories are usually quite short, and surveys like this in any country will have some kind of bias towards recent leaders, but the results of this poll were striking. Barack Obama, Trump's predecessor, was by far the most popular president. 54% of people answered Obama. Nobody even came close. Some Japanese, maybe members of the older generation, liked JFK and Ronald Reagan. However, Donald Trump was not popular. Only 2% of Japanese answered Trump. After almost 4 years in office, Trump was clearly unpopular among Japanese people, and many seemed to long for the days of Barack Obama's presidency. Unfortunately, at the time of making this video, I couldn't find any polls that asked Japanese in 2020 if they preferred Joe Biden or Trump, but after Joe Biden won the 2020 election, some Trump supporters insisted that a Biden presidency would be bad for America's foreign relations, but polls in Japan didn't seem to show that. According to a Nihon Keizai Shimbun poll conducted shortly after Biden's victory, only 8% of Japanese believed that US-Japan relations would worsen. More than doubled that number believed that the situation would improve, and a majority expected neither positive nor negative changes. So there wasn't a huge degree of positivity towards Biden, but there wasn't the level of negativity that polls showed towards Trump in previous years. When it came to the Biden years, US-Japan relations were rather stable. Japanese conservatives were also able to move forward with long-held plans to strengthen Japan's defense capabilities, and from the perspective of Japan's government, the US seemed to be taking a satisfactory role in security in the region. So this wasn't a period of instability or fear in Japan. So it doesn't really seem like there was a lot of negativity towards Biden and the Biden administration. It was like US-Japan relations were running on a rather stable kind of default setting as they had run during the Obama years. Then came the 2024 election. Unlike the 2020 election, I could find a couple of polls that directly asked Japanese voters which candidate they preferred. One poll conducted by the Mainichi Shimbun in August 2024 found that 75% of Japanese wanted Kamala Harris to win. Only 18% favored Trump. This is a slight increase from the number of Japanese who favored Trump back in 2016, but it's still a very small minority of Japanese. However, it should be noted that the Mainichi is not a conservative media outlet, so you could say that this poll might be slightly skewed to the left. However, a similar poll conducted by the Nihon Keizai Shimbun also produced similar results. Respondents overwhelmingly favored Harris over Trump, 71% to 19%, and this media outlet is the Japanese equivalent of the Wall Street Journal. It's not generally considered to be left-wing, so you can't really write this off as a biased left-wing poll that was meant to make Trump look bad. In November 2024, Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris, and Japan's Prime Minister Ishiba Shigeru was quick to congratulate the new president-elect. He also didn't seem to smile too much when he met with Ambassador Rahm Emanuel here in this photo, but in his tweet, he was giving heartfelt congratulations to the new president-elect. But now, let's see how, with the world confronting a second Trump administration, Japanese public opinion has reacted. It doesn't look like there was a very big change. Here is a Yomiuri poll right after the election that asked people, will Trump becoming president be good for Japan? Only 31% said it would be good, while 49% had a negative view of Trump's impact on Japan. The Yomiuri is a conservative media outlet, kind of center-right. This is not a poll that is going to have a left-wing bias against Trump, so I think you can trust these numbers not to be skewed in a way that is meant to make Trump look especially bad. Here is another example of a Yomiuri poll that was conducted together with Gallup in late November 2024, where they asked people, what are your feelings about the incoming Trump administration? They had two choices, hope or expectation, kitai, or anxiety or unease, fuang. And anxiety and unease won out with 63% versus only 27% for the hope and expectation answer. They also asked, how will Japan-US relations change? And only 11% of people thought that there would be an improvement with Trump becoming president. 49% thought it would stay the same, which is, according to the Yomiuri's article, down from 81% during the Biden term in 2022, and 33% of Japanese thought that US-Japan relations would become worse under Trump. So right after the election in November, Japanese answering a poll not having very positive views of the incoming Trump administration. Here is another Yomiuri poll. This one was conducted right before the inauguration in January 2025. And they asked people, do you feel anxiety or unease about Trump's America First views or America First policy? And 72% of people answered yes, they do feel unease. And only 21% of Japanese answered no to this question. The same poll asked people, do you think Prime Minister Ishiba will be able to build a relationship of trust with President Donald Trump? And only 23% of Japanese answered yes, while 66% answered no. Some of this can be attributed to negative views of Trump, but there's also negative views of Prime Minister Ishiba, who doesn't exactly have a very high approval rating at the time this poll was taken. Next, let's move on to the final poll that I could find. This is from Fuji TV or FNN in January 2025, right before the inauguration. And this asks, how do you think Japan-US relations will change after Donald Trump becomes president? 5.2% thought it would improve, 58.1% thought that relations would stay the same, and 32.5% thought that relations would get worse. So this is a similar result to the Yomiuri poll. It should be noted that FNN is part of the Sankei group, and this is a rather conservative media outlet, so this is a conservative poller that tends to give results that are more favorable to conservative politicians. But in this case, they only have 5.2% of Japanese thinking that Trump will bring an improvement in relations between their countries. It's certainly, though, not as bad as a result that would say a majority thinking that relations will become worse. To summarize, polls conducted by Japanese media organizations on both the political left and the political right have repeatedly shown that most Japanese people do not have a positive view of Donald Trump. They didn't have a positive view before he became president in 2017, and they still don't today. Only a small minority of Japanese, maybe 10 to 30% of people, can be actually seen as Trump supporters or people who like Trump or consider Trump a positive for US-Japan relations. And there are some conservative Japanese who welcome a Trump presidency, but some polls have shown that even people who support Japan's ruling conservative party don't really have positive views of Trump. From a national security standpoint, some conservatives would probably have preferred if Harris had won the recent election, as it would likely be a repeat of the stable US-Japan ties that took place during the Biden years. But what's done is done, and Prime Minister Ishiba is going to try his hardest to be friendly towards Trump, even if most Japanese people don't really like the new president. Some of you watching this video might not like what you've just heard and will respond by claiming that these polls are fake or that Japan actually really loves Trump. And maybe you're right. Maybe every major polling agency in Japan is hugely inaccurate when polling only about Trump, even though they tend to be regarded as pretty accurate when it comes to other stuff here. Some of you who have visited or lived in Japan might feel that you've encountered more Japanese Trump lovers than Trump haters, which would be anecdotal evidence from your social encounters in a society where many people actively avoid getting into political arguments with people they disagree with, especially when it comes to the topic of US politics, which are seen as more violent than Japanese politics. Maybe even you've noticed that there are videos online of pro-Trump demonstrations in Japan, which are being shared by internet users who claim that it is proof that Japan loves Trump. In fact, I've been to some of these demonstrations. One of the videos used by Reuters News a few years ago was a video that I filmed on my phone. As someone who researches Japanese politics, I came and I observed that these demonstrations were small in size, and they involved practitioners of fringe religious organizations such as Happy Science, Falun Gong, and offshoots of the Unification Church. These demonstrations are not representative of normal Japanese views of Trump. So, To conclude, in this video, I've presented the most reliable data I've found on Trump's popularity, or more accurately, lack of popularity in Japan. It seems rather clear that most of Japan is not feeling great about another 4 years of Donald Trump as President of the United States of America. All right, I've covered the main data points that I've found, so I'll wrap up the video here. If you like this video and you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Also, please leave a comment. If you have any comments about perhaps encounters you've had with people in Japan and what they've said about Trump, it would be quite interesting to hear your stories. Also, please consider supporting this channel on Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day.